Hey everyone, welcome into my Week 14 NFL Power Rankings. We're going to get right into it. If you could please just take a second to hit that like button down below. I would really appreciate it. It really helps me out more than you know. And let's go ahead and get started. So at the bottom, the Houston Texans are going to reclaim the bottom spot in the NFL. This team is just a horrific watch. We got a little Davis Mills action this week, and there's nothing that can be said about the Texans that we haven't said already. The Jacksonville Jaguars are going to drop down 2 spots, actually, to number 31. This team is like a month removed from really being competitive in a football game with a rookie coach and a rookie quarterback. You want to see a young team like this getting better as the season goes on, and you're not seeing that with Jacksonville, which is maybe even more disappointing than just their season results as a whole. Then we got the Detroit Lions getting their first win. Look, this team's been really competitive for the majority of this season. So good to see Dan Campbell get his first win, and I just can't wait to see really what he can do with this team with another offseason to kind of start putting together a more competent roster here, because I do think this team is genuinely pretty well coached. Then the New York Jets, they're going to climb up a spot because I think the Jags are just a worse team than them right now, at least the Jets. You got Zach Wilson played a little bit better this week. They're figuring out how to really use Elijah Moore. That's been fun. The defense, though, it was really disappointing to see them not build off of what they were able to do against the Texans last week. So those are your bottom feeders, no argument there. And then we have our next tier here are still bad teams, but a little more scrappy. But I will say this next tier are teams that I don't see as playoff teams at all. So the New York Giants, Daniel Jones, no Daniel Jones, it really doesn't matter. This offense has no identity. They have no idea what they're doing or want to do on that side of the ball. Jason Garrett, Freddie Kitchens, nothing they do seems to matter. For the New York Giants, this is just a team stuck in neutral. And then the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, look, I get it. This team is technically in the playoff race, but if they were to sneak in as an 8-9 wild card team, they'd be, a 10-point underdog against whoever they played. They got slaughtered by the Bucs. These two teams were like in a different league. If it wasn't for just this weird, fluky, granted, an impressive play by Marlon Davidson, but a fluky play nonetheless, where he picks off a screen pass and walks it into the end zone with a 5-yard return right before half. The Bucs steamrolled these guys. Their defense sucks, and Matt Ryan can't carry this offense. He's not good enough. So Atlanta Falcons staying put at 27, and the Chicago Bears at 26. The elements of Soldier Field kind of bit themselves in the ass here, because 4 turnovers in this game. No one could really hold on to a football. They actually kind of pound for pound did okay against the Cardinals. They clearly weren't the better team, but I'm just saying the turnovers really crushed them this week. And then the Carolina Panthers are going to drop down a spot on bye week because another team had a better week. And then the New Orleans Saints are going to drop down to the offense is just decrepit. The Taysom Hill experience is wild. The defense is really impressive. I'll give them that. They've still fought, and they're still one of the better defenses in the league. They kept them in that game against Dallas, but this offense just there's no element of consistency with the state of the quarterback room right now. So I'm pretty comfortable saying those teams are not playoff teams. And then the next group here are teams that are not playoff caliber teams, but are kind of in the mix and making things a little interesting as far as these playoff races go. So that's going to start with the Seattle Seahawks. Big win against the Niners, kind of kept their season alive. I mean, crazier things have happened than Russell Wilson getting healthy, getting hot, and the Seahawks sneaking in as a 9-8 wild card team now that there's 7 teams. They're pretty far out of the mix right now, but they do have Russell Wilson, who's starting to play better football. I will give the defense some credit. They're playing better. So +2 for Seattle. Their season's alive for what it's worth. Then the Denver Broncos, they're going to drop down 4 spots because a lot of these other teams just had more impressive weeks. Denver has wildly been an incredibly inconsistent team, and more specifically, Teddy Bridgewater has been a wildly inconsistent quarterback. It's been different from what you normally think about Teddy Bridgewater. There's been weeks where he's come out and actually played really good football and looked like, one of the I'm not going to get too dramatic here, but seriously, there's been weeks where he's looked like a top 10 quarterback in that week, and then he'll just come out and look like a backup. It's not exactly what you always think about Teddy. You think of this Alex Smith kind of tote the line average every week. No, the Broncos have actually fluctuated really significantly from week to week, and I think it just comes down to the offense and their inconsistency, which I think points back to Teddy Bridgewater. And then I'm going to do something I've never done in the history of these power rankings, and I am going to list a tie here for the 21st spot. We've got two NFC East rivals here that play twice in the next 3 weeks. I kept moving these guys back and forth, and I was like, screw it. These teams are almost identical. I literally think they are identical. Both teams are slightly above average defensively, though Washington's playing better lately. Both these teams are effectively playing backup caliber quarterbacks that are playing decent football right now. Both teams have one alpha receiver and then a mishmash of options to try and get the ball to. Both teams have, let's just say, really good offensive lines with raw running backs. It's pretty crazy. These teams are both in the same division, and you can draw a ton of parallels. They both have 6 wins. They play twice in the next 3 weeks. And I'm going to take the cop-out answer and tie these guys at 21. Then the Miami Dolphins, really impressive run here. 5 straight? Granted, they're not playing the best level of competition, but you got to win against the Ravens in there. This defense has totally come alive. Got to credit Brian Flores. Offensively, they've at least identified what they can get away with, and that is Tua having the 36th out of 39th average depth of target, just running a bunch of RPOs, feeding the ball to Jalen Waddle and jump balls to Mike Gesicki, and just kind of hope you get run after catch and contested balls. And it's not an effective offense, but at least it doesn't turn the football over. And if you can get 16 to 20 points, you play great defense, you can sneak by against Mike Glennon. If you want my honest opinion, I think the hype is building a little bit too quickly on Miami because a lot of people saw this as a playoff team heading into the year. They've still got a long way to go, but I will give Brian Flores and Tua the credit they deserve. They've salvaged their season and made things interesting. Then we've got our next tier here, and these are teams that are certainly playoff caliber teams, but teams with pretty glaring weaknesses, which makes them a very matchup dependent football team, either an injured football team or just a week-to-week football team. So starting with the Las Vegas Raiders, dropping down 2 spots. I just see this as a very middling football team. The offense is pretty average with Derek Carr, and the defense has been better this year, going from worst in the NFL to solid. And that leaves them right in the middle here. It leaves them as a 500 football team. It's also going to put them in a position where they can come out and beat the Cowboys one week and then lose to Washington the next week. There's really not a ton more to say about the Las Vegas Raiders. And then the Minnesota Vikings. What a tragic week here, losing to the Detroit Lions, showing that they are genuinely one of the worst coach teams in the league. Conservative play calling, a lack of innovation on defense, where Mike Zimmer is supposed to be this defensive guru. This looked like a team that thought they would just come out, show up, and get a win. Dan Campbell and the fighting Detroit Lions had other plans here. Just a horrific game plan on that final drive where Jared Goff just took check down after check down until the Vikings gifted them a wide open lane for a last-second touchdown. Adam Thielen gets injured this week, a high ankle sprain. Thursday Night Football, he's probably not going to be in there this week. The Vikings, just like the Raiders, man, so remarkably average and capable of laying stinkers. And it's time for Mike Zimmer to go. I know they had a short week with Thursday Night Football, but if they lose to the Steelers, you got to make the move, man. It's just time. Then we have the Cleveland Browns benefiting from the bye week. We know this team is really banged up. This team clearly has issues, but hopefully the bye week Baker can get a little bit more healthy. They can kind of hit the lab as far as what can work for them offensively moving forward, which has really been tough to watch for these guys recently. But I know this defense can ball out, which means they're right there with a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are very much a defensive-oriented football team. Huge win for Pittsburgh against the Ravens. It wasn't easy, but it was a reminder of the resiliency of this football team and some of the star talent they do have. Deontay Johnson's having an amazing season. Big Ben's giving it everything he can, for his lack of talent, physical talent at this point in his career, I should say. he's still a veteran quarterback that can relatively avoid mistakes and put the ball in the hands of these guys and lean into the defense. They're a decent football team. And it was a big win for them this week against Baltimore. Then the Tennessee Titans, bye week this week. They're going to get to stay put at 14. Hopefully these guys can get healthy and then get back into that top 10, kind of top AFC contention. Then the San Francisco 49ers. I'm only going to drop down one spot here. It was a really weird game against Seattle, not to make a ton of excuses, but also Deebo Samuel. He's only going to miss hopefully another week here. I know they lost to Seattle here, but it's never easy to go into Seattle and beat Russell Wilson, especially when you get all these crazy turnovers on both sides of the ball. You come out at half and fumble the opening kick return. It just kind of derails a lot of stuff. So getting the identity of their offense with Deebo back, I still think the play calling has been really good over the last month. They're getting George Kittle going. And it was a disappointing loss for sure, but I really don't think there was a ton to take away from that for the Niners, who are still in a really good position to get that 6th seed in the NFC. And I think they're still kind of dangerous, honestly. And then the Baltimore Ravens are going to drop down 3 and actually into this tier of like really flawed playoff teams. I said it before the Steelers game. It's the reason I picked the Steelers. The Ravens offense is just as much of a mess as the Browns or the Steelers or the Titans right now in this category. They lost Marlon Humphrey on the defensive side of the ball. How many injuries can you really endure? The main difference is you have Lamar Jackson, who can just pull a rabbit out of a hat and bring you back into any football game. That's really the main difference between them and some of these other teams in this tier. But Baltimore very clearly flawed right now, and it's not all their fault. Like, this team has just been suffocated by their own injuries. But you look at their slate over the last month of the season, they haven't been an overly impressive football team, and surely not a team that I think is poised for a Super Bowl run here as we get down the home stretch. And that's a good transition because our next tier here and every team left in these rankings are teams that I can at least picture winning a Super Bowl if they got hot into the playoffs. And I will say this next tier has 5 teams in it. They're all AFC teams. And the reason I can still see these teams winning a Super Bowl is because the AFC just doesn't have really a whole lot of top dogs. So I could see these teams, someone's got to win out in the AFC. So because of the nature of that conference, I can see these teams winning a Super Bowl, but I don't consider these guys like your typical Super Bowl favorites, if that makes sense. Anyway, the Los Angeles Chargers are going to climb up 2 spots into this spot. Huge win against the Bengals. That's why I can see them climbing into this picture here. But, it's still a flawed football team. I think this was a really weird football game. I'm not trying to take too much away from the Chargers, but the game script really helped them. They get the strip sack early. They get the Jamar Chase bobble interception that was at least a 7-point swing in this game. They still got issues, man. They're a week removed from really getting their ass kicked by the Denver Broncos. I think you look at that Broncos game, you look at the second half of this Bengals game, they still need to develop a counterpunch to this offense. I definitely encourage you guys to check out my conversation with the Guilty as Charged guys from last week's podcast. Just a good talk about where the Chargers are at right now. A huge week for them. Don't want to come off overly pessimistic, but I wanted to preface some of that because they are still going to rank below the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, Chargers fans are going to be mad about this one. Anytime you got 2 teams back-to-back like this after one team beat the other, I get it. You want to put the Chargers ahead of the Bengals, I'm perfectly fine with that. These 2 teams are very close. I look at that game and I say, you know what? Weird game script. Bengals got down early. They have a bunch of injuries in this game. Joe Burrow's finger goes the other way. They scratched and clawed their way back in, and credit to the Chargers for finishing the game off at the end. But just weird turnovers in this one that really hurt the Bengals. Jamar Chase coughs up what would have been a touchdown. It turns into an interception. Joe Mixon just gifts a touchdown to the Chargers. Just a weird game. Anyone that watched that one should agree that it's just, you don't want to take too much away from a game that has that much randomness and craziness in it. I still look at the Bengals. Their last 3 weeks of football is a more impressive slate than what the Chargers have shown. So that's my explanation there. The Chargers are a week removed from getting steamrolled by the Denver Broncos. I still see the Bengals as a very well-balanced football team. They can run the ball. They've got Joe Burrow playing at a really high level. Their defense is just well balanced. Chidobe Awuzie has been awesome. I know he got injured in this game. Hopefully that's not a significant injury for him. I haven't heard word on that one quite yet. But yeah, the Bengals are going to stay put at 10 despite the loss. And then the Buffalo Bills are going to drop down 3. I mean, this team's very much living off of what we remember from them last year. And you do want to do that. You know, you don't want to just look at this year. You want to draw from every pool of information you can. We know Josh Allen is capable of going off. We know Diggs is phenomenal, and Brian Dable's a really good offensive coordinator. But as you look at this team as they are right now, it's hurting them. I mean, they're not a great passing team. They've regressed clearly from what they were last year. They're not a good team at the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball. They've lost Tre'Davious White in the secondary, so their defense is good still, but it's just not an ultra-talented defense. What are the Buffalo Bills right now other than in this mix of good AFC teams? Then we have the Indianapolis Colts very much in this picture. They got to get into the playoffs first, but if they do, I do think they're genuinely one of the best teams in the AFC right now. Just their ability to dominate a game at the line of scrimmage. Jonathan Taylor, a genuine MVP candidate at the running back position. I do think if he sustains this rate, he's got a good chance of winning it, especially if none of these quarterbacks really claim the thing, which is exciting. And this defense is really fun, man. They're super well balanced. I think they're one of the best coached defenses in the league. Matt Eberflus is doing such a phenomenal job with that group. The Colts got to get in, and it's the AFC's job to keep them out, because if they get in, they're capable of beating anybody in this conference. And then the New England Patriots. Now, some Patriots fans are going to be mad that I put them in this tier. I still think they're a limited team offensively, and I don't think that's something you can really argue with. I mean, they don't have great receivers. Mac Jones is good for a rookie, but he's, an average quarterback. And that's just going to hold you back a little bit in playoff football. But they can still run the ball like daylights. Their offensive line is one of the best in the league. And this defense, with the way Bill Belichick is scheming up all these different guys, is phenomenal. Honestly, 7th is a very respectable ranking for a team that, is a bottom 10 offense in the NFL. I think they very much benefited from the environment that they got to play in. I mean, Bill Belichick came out and was like, yes, rain game, 35 degrees in Buffalo. I live for this. Mac Jones, take a seat. You're throwing the ball 3 times today. What a fun game for old school, football fans. But still, I think the Patriots are one of the best teams in the AFC. They currently have the 1 seed in the AFC. They're going to be the 2nd ranked team in the AFC. I see this as a very respectable ranking. But I need to say those things because I've had Patriots fans come into the comments and say, we're top 3, we're top 5. I just disagree. And that's why I have a tier gap up for these next 6 teams, because the 6 remaining teams are teams that I view as genuine Super Bowl contending caliber teams. Well-rounded teams, good quarterbacks, good defenses, teams that can beat you in a multitude of ways, which I would say most of the teams that we've had so far don't have that level of fortitude about them. And that's going to start with the LA Rams. They get their get-right game against the Jaguars. Hopefully that means Matthew Stafford can heat back up. He's been a very streaky quarterback throughout his career, and that's really what this is about. It's a really good defense. They've got playmakers on offense. They've got one of the best coaches in the league, a good offensive line. If Matthew Stafford can heat back up and play like he did in the first half of the season as opposed to the last month or so, the Rams are right back into the Super Bowl picture, but that is obviously a question mark. Then the Dallas Cowboys, +1. This offense has really cooled down. The run game hasn't been as good. The receivers have been on and off the field. It's slowed Dak down a little bit. I think this defense is a defense that can give up some yardage, but they have playmakers as well. They are a very well-balanced team. Like I said, they can beat you in a multitude of ways. They're a scary team. hopefully that offense can get healthy and resume the dominance they showed in the first couple months of the season. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, +1. This is going to round out actually another tier within the Super Bowl contenders, because I think there is a separation between these 3 teams and our next 3 teams, but the Chiefs are creeping up towards that. The one thing with the Chiefs is they kind of went back to some struggles offensively. Mahomes missing some throws, just the explosives not really there. But what you love about the Chiefs is that defense has totally settled in. You got Chris Jones, Willie Gay. The secondary is actually a really solid group. It just took them a little bit of time to kind of get healthy, figure out where they needed to put their pieces. And then if you have a solid defense with Patrick Mahomes, like that's a Super Bowl team, especially in the AFC that just, it doesn't have a lot of alpha dogs. It really doesn't have any, to be honest. And then talk about alpha dogs, that's why I have a tier gap up. I think these next 3 teams are just clearly the 3 Super Bowl favorites. The tough thing is some of these guys are going to have to beat each other. One of these teams is going to have to beat the other 2 probably twice. So hard to say who that's going to be at this point. I think these guys are incredibly close, but the Tampa Bay Bucks are going to stay put at number 3, the Cardinals at number 2, and the Packers at number 1. I think you could really order these guys any way you want. You've got 3 MVP candidates at quarterback on all of these teams. All these teams can run the ball effectively. I think they're all very well coached, and all 3 of these teams have very solid defenses. I don't think week 13 changed the way I view these teams. And that is all she wrote. Content's going to look a little different over the next 3 weeks. We got the wedding next week, honeymoon, holidays. So we're kind of actually shifting a little bit more towards draft content and getting off of our regularly scheduled content. We will have power rankings again next week. But I'm actually going to be posting my Madden 23 franchise mode wish list tomorrow. That's going to be the very last Madden video on this channel before I officially move all Madden content to my second channel, TFG Plays. Go ahead and check that out. Gonna have a live mailbag podcast at some point this week, and some more film-based content and a mock draft next week while I'm out of town getting ready for the wedding. So again, content changing up a little bit. I appreciate all you guys for watching. Please do hit that like button if you enjoyed. Drop a comment down below where I was right, where I was wrong. What are your power rankings this week? But peace out, everyone. We'll see you for the next video.